What if NWBO doesn't need to become the next giant biotech to make early investors serious money? Right now, NWBO is trading around the 18-cent area. And that sounds cheap. But here's the real question. Can NWBO actually reach 5 or 10 odds or even 20? These are not guaranteed targets. They're scenario-based possibilities. Northwest Biotherapeutics is developing DCVax-L, a personalized cancer vaccine targeting glioblastoma, one of the most aggressive brain cancers. The company has completed its phase 3 trial, and updated patient-level analyses released in 2026 suggested the survival benefit may have been stronger than originally captured. Depending on the analysis, the reported survival advantage ranged from roughly 3.4 to 6.3 months. That doesn't guarantee approval, but it gives investors a reason to keep watching. And here's where things get interesting. What happens if DCVax-L actually gets through the regulatory process? Let's start with $5. NWBO has roughly 1.6 billion shares outstanding. At $5, that would mean around an $8 billion valuation. Sounds huge compared with today's price, but biotech valuations can change dramatically when a company moves from clinical speculation toward commercial potential. If DCVax-L gets approved, manufacturing expands, partnerships develop, and investors see a realistic revenue opportunity. $5 becomes much easier to imagine. But approval alone isn't enough. NWBO still has to prove it can manufacture and commercialize a personalized treatment at scale. And that could be one of the biggest challenges. Now, what about $10? At $10, NWBO would be worth roughly $16 billion using the current share count. For me, that requires much more. I'd want to see real commercialization, actual patients, meaningful revenue, and evidence that DCVax can expand beyond one indication. NWBO has also discussed additional programs, including DCVax Direct and DCVax Prostate. If the platform eventually works across multiple solid tumors, investors could start valuing NWBO as more than a one-product company. And there's another angle investors should watch closely. Saudi Arabia. NWBO announced an MOU with Spimako involving potential regulatory, marketing, sales, and distribution activities for DCVax-L. An MOU is not a completed commercial deal, but if it develops into real commercialization, it could open another international market. And now we reach the big one. 20. Could NWBO reach 20? Technically, yes. But personally, I'd put that firmly in the extreme bull case category. At 20, NWBO would be worth roughly $33 billion using the current share count. To justify that valuation, we'd likely need successful regulatory outcomes, strong commercial adoption, major revenue growth, international expansion, and evidence that the broader DCVax platform has significant value. So here's my honest opinion. I see $5 as the first major level that becomes interesting. If regulatory and commercial execution goes right, $10 requires a much stronger business. And 20, that's the moonshot. But there's one risk investors cannot ignore: dilution. Biotech companies often need capital before generating major revenue. More financing can mean more shares, which changes the math for existing investors. So don't just watch the share price. Watch regulatory progress, partnerships, manufacturing, revenue, cash, and dilution. That's what could determine whether NWBO remains a speculative biotech or becomes something much bigger. And this is the part I think investors sometimes miss. A stock trading at 18 cents isn't automatically cheap. The real question is what the company could actually be worth after the next major catalyst. If DCVax-L gets approved and commercialization starts moving forward, the market could value NWBO very differently. But if regulatory delays, financing pressure, or weak commercialization appear, those big price targets could remain nothing more than speculation. Now I want to hear from you. If DCVax-L gets approved, what's your NWBO target? $1, $5, $10? Or are you betting on 20? Drop your target in the comments and tell me why. And if you want to follow NWBO as these catalysts develop, hit subscribe, because one major regulatory or commercial announcement could completely change the story. This is not financial advice. Do your own research and understand the risks before investing.